Day 8, we're talking about fire. So a lot of the media attention recently has been paid to physical risks like flooding and hurricanes and tornadoes, but fire still remains the number one biggest risk to your property, your equipment, and also life safety within your organizations, your companies, and just in your private life as well. So we're really going to do a rundown here of fire safety, but I can't really give you a nice little bite-sized video with all the different nuances that have to be included here. So I'm definitely going to direct you to the full text article if you want some of the more finer points that are covered in this topic. So the two big components to fire safety have to do with planning and then training. All right, so planning wise, the first thing is to look at your operations and identify those parts of your operation that might be susceptible to fire losses, but also end up causing fire losses. So we actually talked about that a little bit in the lost drivers video or module, so you can refer back to that one as well. So planning-wise, the first thing planning-wise that you should put into place is that every single one of your locations where you operate, whether they're buildings or physical kind of premises locations, each one of those should have a fire safety plan. And that fire safety plan should be specific to that location because no two locations are exactly alike. The fire safety plan should outline things like evacuation routes, how often you do fire drills and things like that. It should also talk about the communication chain in the event of a really bad fire, or you have to evacuate a location. You should know who has to be notified, who to listen to, and then also how to identify that everyone who was there that day was able to get out and get out safely, because that's going to be important, especially if someone's missing. You have to communicate that to the fire officials that show up and the firefighters, so that they know that they're looking for one or two or a handful of people that you haven't been able to identify. Second part of planning is the overall fire safety devices that you have included in your premises and your operations. Make sure that they're well planned out and that they're maintained and working. So things like having a really good design for smoke detectors, CO2 and CO detectors, as well as alarm systems, sprinkler systems. Don't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants here. There are a lot of building inspection and building code requirements for fire safety devices and systems, so you should definitely adhere to those, but don't think that those are the end-all be-all. You should go above and beyond if your operations or the locations that you operate in call for it. So a big thing that I'm always looking at whenever I'm at one of my clients' locations is their exits, the exit signs, whether those are maintained and working, emergency lighting, fire extinguishers. Not just having them. I mean, you have them, but also you have to routinely inspect them to make sure that they stay charged, because there's nothing more disheartening or just heartbreaking than finding out about people that were injured or lives lost in a fire, and they had fire extinguishers in the building, but the fire extinguishers were old, they hadn't been checked, and they didn't have any charge left in them. So always keep that in mind. All right, and then the last part on the planning phase is to coordinate ahead of time with local fire officials and fire departments. Let them, give them layouts of the property or the premises. Make sure that they know what you're doing. In a lot of cases, it really helps for them to know what kind of chemicals or other types of materials that you might have on premises, because that can also change how they're going to fight the fire or how they try and contain a fire if it happens at your location. The other thing to include here goes beyond just fire safety, but the idea of having MSDS sheets for all of the different chemicals and materials in your premises on file, not just at your location, but with the fire department, to make sure that they're privy to what those things are, but also the special considerations that come with each of them. All right, so going into the training phase here, routinely run fire drills. I know it's annoying, but it's very important. People get lulled into complacency if they don't have fire drills, or if the fire drills are done without an emphasis on actually, sticking to the plan and the evacuation routes. This kind of crosses over with the planning phase as well. Make sure that every single one of your facilities has evacuation routes posted, and that those evacuation routes are easy to read and clear and concise, so that in a chaotic event like a large fire at a location, people aren't confused and don't understand how to use the evacuation routes or take the correct one to get out safely. If you are a very large organization, you might even have the need for an on-site fire response team. It goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's so important. They need to be well trained, they need to be well coordinated and organized, understand the communication chain, and they need to understand that they are not there to be heroes. They're going to be the first line of defense, so to speak, or protection for your employees and for your assets and your equipment. But on top of that, you need to communicate to them that, above all else, we want to make sure that they get out alive as well. So there shouldn't be any, misunderstanding about, to what extent they need to kind of put themselves at risk in order to take care of things at those locations. All right, training. You should also train pretty religiously on your daily operations so that your staff know how to do their jobs without creating a fire situation or a fire hazard within the organization. All too often, we just assume that people are going to continue to do things properly and safely, but truthfully, they have to be reminded from time to time, if they take a shortcut or something like that, that it can actually end up resulting in a really unsafe hazard or unsafe environment, which could promote a fire happening. So you have to make sure to consistently train your employees and your personnel to make sure that they're up to date on those best practices and safe operating practices. And then the last piece here has to do with updating employees on product recalls and unsafe equipment that might be out there in the marketplace. Perfect example is in office buildings. A lot of people use space heaters, especially if they don't like the climate control system or how it operates within the building. So they might have, at their feet or on their desks, space heaters. Well, if there's a product recall on certain space heaters that are in the building, we need to inform employees about that so that they know not to use those or to discontinue using them if they constitute a higher risk of creating a fire within the premises. And that applies as well to things like household appliances that might be used, like microwaves or refrigerators or other types of equipment that might be in the break room, or more complicated equipment like those pieces of equipment that you're using in your daily operations, either in a capacity of creating material or using it to provide a service. We need to make sure that all of those that constitute a higher risk of fire hazard are removed or maintained or fixed to make sure that they're not creating a really bad environment where a fire could start as a result of those things. So that's fire safety in a nutshell. Again, check the article because there's a lot of nuances involved in this. Please like the video, subscribe, share it, comment, ask questions, and we'll see you on day 9.